Who is the best linebacker in the 2022 NFL Draft, and could the Cowboys pick one in round one? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can find me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out at McCoolBCB. Landon, let's start with this. If the Cowboys drafted linebacker in round one, you would feel
resigned, I think. You know, it's one of those things where you know that the Cowboys need something here. The kind of value and need sort of line up with where the Cowboys are picking. Do I generally love the idea of taking an off-ball linebacker? Technically an off-ball linebacker 2 years in a row, not necessarily. But I think when you factor in what Micah Parsons is doing in total for your offense and how much this would even further free him up to do more of those extra things, I think it makes it a lot more palatable, especially picking at 24 in a weak year at the top of the draft.
And that's the key, right? You're picking at 24 and not 12. So if you happen to take a guy there and you love him, I get it. I mean, you know my thoughts on the value of off-the-ball linebackers, but I can get behind it if it's the right player at pick number 24. Today, we're going to take a look at the top three linebackers, or at least we think the top three linebackers in the 2022 NFL draft, and kind of compare and contrast these guys. And let's start with Devin Lloyd from Utah. On most boards, he's the number one linebacker. What did you see from him when you watched him on tape?
I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a linebacker that played with number 0. That was a very odd feeling at first to watch. First of all, there's just not a lot of players that play with 0 as the number in general. My notes are athletic build, long arm, legs with thin midsection. I really like the body. It looks like an NFL linebacker. He's a 3-tool linebacker, meaning he plays the run, he drops in coverage, he can rush the passer. I saw him play off ball, inside and outside, off the ball, and on the edge as a stand-up guy. I also saw him with his hand down a couple different times, kind of rushing the passer. So I think he has some flexibility there. Speaking of flexibility, he has good physical flexibility to get small and able to operate in kind of tight spaces. He can drop his weight and change directions on a dime. The issue I have with him comes with the processing speed. I think he can be a little bit slow to pull the trigger. When he fires off, he gets there quickly, and I think it makes up for a lot of the kind of hesitation that he may have early in the snap. But his athleticism has made up for it in college. Will it do so in the NFL? That's a question. I think he's a real easy mover. He can flip his hips in coverage when he needs to get into pass drops. He's got very, very good hands. I think you brought it up to me. I wasn't aware that he's a former wide receiver, if I'm not mistaken. But you see that in some of the catches and some of the plays he makes with his hands. Very powerful striker as a tackler and a block shedder. Watched him stone both a pulling guard and tackle versus Oregon. Split both and made a tackle on the running back. He seems almost like a poor man's pre-injury Jalen Smith is what I actually put. Where does he win with versatile athleticism? And the unanswered questions I had were, can his processor speed up a little bit? Because you can't just rely solely on athleticism in the NFL. You need to be able to see it and read it a lot quicker, and then that'll give you that extra step that will more than make up for the speed difference between college and the NFL.
I mean, you nailed it. The only thing I would add is once I watched the tape, Landon, and then I found out that it was a former receiver, it made so much sense, right? Like you can tell, like some of the plays that he makes in coverage, and when the ball, I don't even want to say it's thrown at him, because there's a couple where he just jumps up and picks it off, very similar to Marcus Ware against the Falcons many years ago, right? But like his hands are insane, and he's kind of just like that modern NFL linebacker where you feel really good about him in coverage. He's got the size and the athleticism to match up against tight ends. I think he's still developing like as a spot dropper, but I mean, I compared him to Fred Warner, like a little bit of a comp between like Fred Warner and Trayvon Edmonds, the linebacker the Bills took in 2018, something like that. That's what I could see him being like in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I see a guy who, when you, like I said, when you told me that he used to be a wide receiver, that it all fell into place. I could totally see him as this overly physical wide receiver that is just bullying defensive backs,
Yep.
and that they were finally just like, "Hey, dude, why don't we just put you on defense? Let's see what you can do." I think, yeah, he's one of these guys, right, that we talked about, that he needs football development. He's an athlete.
Yep.
He doesn't need any physical seasoning or any kind of improvement on the physical side of things. He needs to play more football. He needs to take more snaps. He needs to develop as a football player. And that's where he's going to get better. I think this is a fully formed athlete ready to play in the NFL from that point of view.
I really think it would have been his sophomore year during the kind of the COVID season, right? Like,
yeah,
he only played 340 snaps because Utah just didn't play a bunch of games because the Pac-12 just didn't play a lot of games that season. So he was missing out on 500 snaps. And I think he kind of needed those. And you saw him as the year went on, like when he got to the Rose Bowl. I mean, he was unbelievable in that game. But I kind of think he's the modern NFL linebacker. And let's talk about his fit with the Cowboys. Like,
yeah,
wouldn't shock me at all if he falls to pick 24 because linebackers generally fall. How does he fit into this defense?
Oh, I mean, I think he would be an incredible fit. I just because he's so versatile, and I think you could play him off of what you do with Parsons so well, and really create a situation where in snap you don't know who's coming, who's going, who's covering who, and who's blitzing, who's I don't think he's not nearly the versatile athlete that Parsons is.
No,
but he has the athletic ability to kind of do all the things that Parsons does, just not at the same level, right? So meaning that they can be deployed in very, very interesting ways. And again, he can kind of be the guy that, you need to deploy Parsons as a blitzer. Okay, this guy can be the off-ball linebacker in those instances. Oh, you need Parsons to kind of be the off-ball linebacker. This guy can be the guy kind of controlling the line of scrimmage and taking on blockers. So he can play as the kind of Robin to Parsons Batman, I think, very well in a linebacker core.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think I wouldn't be surprised though if he doesn't test as an elite athlete. Like I think if you go by like the relative athletic scores, wouldn't shock me, Landon, like if Leighton Vander Esch had a better score there. But this guy is just way more fluid, right? You just feel much better about him in space.
I honestly, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up, is that as good as we feel about his athleticism, I think it's going to look even more athletic as he learns the game and it becomes second nature. That makes you even more fluid. The fact that he's this fluid without really knowing what he's doing is impressive.
I agree. If the Cowboys picked him at 24, you'd feel how?
I think I feel pretty good. I don't expect him to be there at 24. I expect him to likely to be gone before that. Not that I would necessarily take him above 24, but I just, you see him being drafted high. He's very well high thought of. So I would not be surprised if he wasn't there at 24.
I'm just looking at the consensus board now with all the top draft nicks, and he's going at like his average rank is like 15. So it's possible, right?
That's what I'm seeing too. Yeah. I mean, it certainly is possible that he could make it to us for sure.
Yeah. I think of the linebackers we're going to talk about, I think he has the lowest probability of making it there, but we've seen stranger things before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk about another linebacker. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next coach fired is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline, remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC. Right to your favorite Olympic odds and coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the new trends and actions going on in the sports world. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, this one I've been waiting for a while. Nakobe Dean, Georgia linebacker. What do you think? Let's see when you turn on the tape.
So my notes were noticeably undersized. He looks like a rocked up defensive back. Is he? My question's in here. Is he even 6 foot? I don't think he is 6 feet.
Probably
tall.
not.
But he has decent arm length. It looks like for his height, which helps. Good but not great athlete. Very fluid. He's economical in movement, but he's not bursty or fast, considering how undersized he is, and that usually those players are extremely fast, right? He's purely an off-ball linebacker. Based on his game, when he's not playing will linebacker, it seems that he's much more likely to play in the slot than he would even to play Sam linebacker, right? Just because of the type of athlete he is. He's a good blitzer, knows how to use his frame to get skinny through gaps in the blocking. Like I said, very economical, very little wasted motion, very few false steps. I even saw him follow a wide receiver across the formation pre-snap that ended up being a swing pass to that wide receiver, and Dean saw the entire thing, tackled him for a huge loss. And that's a very typical Nakobe Dean play, I would say. Reads quickly and takes the correct angle almost every time. It's just kind of uncanny how well the processor seems to work, almost kind of inverse of what we're talking about with Lloyd, right? He has running back hips. He just very fluid with his hips. Like I said, the change of direction is not a problem with him. He mirrors backs very well. He's not overly experienced or even talented at taking on blocks. He'll duck under, go around, but he's just not. It just hasn't been something he's had to do very often with this defensive line. Where does he win? He's a high FBI instinctual fluid linebacker. He understands the game very well. He understands his keys and his reads, and he tries to beat people to the spot by knowing what's going on. My unanswered question is, can his instincts continue to overcome a lack of size and athleticism when he doesn't have a dominant defensive line in front of him? The problem with the Georgia players overall in general is that they are in the optimal situation, right? So you are only seeing these snaps for these players with the very best situation that could be provided for them. So you didn't really get as much opportunity with guys like Dean specifically. I think this is something that we'll have to talk about with is 44 Walker. Is that his name?
Yeah, Trayvon Walker. Yep.
Trayvon Walker. I think that some of these guys who are, they're being helped by the fact that they are in incredible situations, and it's helping hide a little bit of their negatives. It's very difficult to kind of evaluate these guys because, depending on where they get drafted, they may not have the defensive line that Georgia had.
If he comes to Dallas, he's not, right?
Yeah. So I think that's my biggest fear with Dean in general is that I see everything that everyone sees as to why he's a hyped player. The thing that scares me is that we're only watching him perform and do all this in the very best situation. What happens when he has to face adversity? What happens when he has to take on blocks more than he's used to? What happens when he's not getting the most comfortable situation and he's having to work outside of this comfort zone with his skill set? That's what I just don't have answers for. And that's kind of scary when you're talking about taking him with the 24th overall pick.
And I get that. You're not wrong. At the same time, what we saw from him last year was incredible. You watch some of those games, like the Michigan game, and he is flying all over the field, and he's making tackles where he starts out on. I know this play because you actually said it to me. He's starting as the right outside corner. Comes all the way over and makes the tackle for the loss behind the line of scrimmage on the left-hand side. His
no hesitation. No hesitation. It was all he knew exactly what the play was. It was just the most fluid thing you've ever seen. It was crazy to watch.
So we were talking about his athleticism. I think it was this weekend. We were just DMing each other back and forth. And I think you and I both had the same concerns. How big is he and how athletic is he? Texted somebody who was at the Georgia Pro Day last year, and they got verified measurements in time. So 5'1", 16". So under 6'4". Right. Yep. 221. Small. 4'6".
If that's true, then it definitely takes some of my concerns a little bit. But I would also say, as he doesn't look like a 4.46 guy with great instincts. You understand what I'm saying? Like, like he looks fast, but
Yeah.
the fact that we're questioning his athleticism and he has good instincts, to me, like I don't
We'll
see
see.
that kind of 4.46
We'll
on
see.
tape necessarily. But
Yeah, and I don't necessarily either. But
yeah,
his play speed is so fast. And that's all that
yeah,
really matters to me. I get the concerns about the size. Like he's just not a big linebacker. He's not long. He doesn't have I think his arms are probably average, right?
probably
He's just not
maybe
a
a little
long
bit.
guy. And he's never going to be somebody that's going to take on blocks and stack and shed and that kind of stuff. I just don't know how much it's going to ultimately matter because he just makes every single play. And I feel like he's the type of guy that I would love to pair Micah Parsons with because if Parsons is playing on the edge or if he's kind of the downhill guy, Dean's just going to clean up every single tackle and he rarely misses tackles. And I just feel like in Dan Quinn's defense, who has a lot of experience with linebackers like this, I think he would be a star. I really do.
I certainly can see that. I certainly, you see that on tape that certainly could be the case. It's just literally the only thing is this big blinking red light. Like, hey, this guy is undersized and potentially could be athletic.
So
How much can you overcome going into the NFL? Like, that's my long-term concern.
Dion Jones coming out of LSU, 6', 222, and ran a 4.59.
Yeah.
I gotta believe that Roquan's gonna actually Roquan. That's a Freudian slip because that's who I compared him to.
Ah.
Nakobe Dean is gonna be somewhere in that same mold of size and athleticism, right?
If that's the case, then it certainly alleviates a certain amount of that for sure. Um,
The
but
problem is he's way more of a true off the ball linebacker compared to what Lloyd is, right? Lloyd, you can
yeah, oh
see
for
him being
sure.
more as a rusher and more as a weapon one-on-one in coverage. Dean is really just your traditional off the ball weak side linebacker.
I mean, Lloyd looks. You can tell me. I think Lloyd looks every bit as fast as Dean does, and is bigger.
I mean,
So
probably. I'll find out while you're talking.
I mean, he's definitely bigger, right?
Oh,
Like,
for
I mean,
sure.
he's
Yeah,
like,
he's
yeah, he's
he's
got like
6'3",
5 or 10 pounds and
335
2 inches
or
on 3
235. Yeah.
inches on Dean. Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's it's a little scary. That's all it is
Okay.
because you're only getting shown, and going in that you're only being shown his best foot. You're not even really getting a chance to see what his worst game looks like. And that's so what that means is that I can't I can't really readily identify a floor for him.
It's fair.
Like,
It's
and
fair.
that's a little bit nerve-wracking to me. I can
Now,
see that the ceiling is very high. I can see that even with a lack of athleticism, even with the lack of size, I can see that the ceiling is very high. But the fact is, I have no idea what his floor is.
does
So
it make
that's
you
that's a
feel?
little scary.
Does it make you feel better that he did play so well at Georgia? He was the leader of that defense, and he just made every big play that they needed. I think that makes me feel better. At least, like,
But don't
let's
don't double
go.
count that is my thing,
It's
right?
fair. Yeah.
Because that's the reason he's in this conversation in the first place, right? So because I mean, otherwise he's an undersized. We'll see about athleticism, but
Yeah.
he's an
Fair.
undersized
He's
linebacker.
undersized. He's
The,
always going to be undersized,
the
right?
the reason he's in this conversation is because he performed at such a level that he put himself in this conversation. So let's not like put him in the conversation and then raise him up for the same thing twice.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he's there. That's why he's there. The question is, does he have what it takes to kind of continue that sort of production into the next level? I think he does. But I don't know what a terrible game of Nakobe Dean looks like. And it's not like he's going to have the kind of career in the NFL that he had in college. Like, that's just, I don't know.
No,
I
it's
don't
not
think
gonna
that
happen.
that's
It's
possible.
impossible,
Really.
right?
Yeah.
How does he fit with the Cowboys?
Very cleanly. I mean, just,
Yeah.
he's an off-ball linebacker. Like you said, he's the opposite linebacker from Parsons. I don't think he's quite the versatile, put him opposite of Parsons wherever Parsons is kind of guy. But at the very least, you have got another very solid off-ball
Yep.
linebacker who can play the position if you need to move Parsons around. And that's the only spot you need to fill.
I agree. He's a plug and play day one starter at the weak side linebacker spot, and I don't think it's all that hard to hit, hard to imagine him being like a Dion Jones in a Dan Quinn defense. So I think you can tell I like him quite a bit. All right, let's take one more quick break so we can tell you guys about Built Bar. It's that time of year again where most people have given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not this year. We are sticking to ours because we have Built Bar, and it's not really a resolution because we love eating Built Bars because they're good for you. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar that's 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. They have so many great flavors. The new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, the last linebacker we're going to talk about today is Christian Harris from Alabama. What did you think?
Oh, wait, hold on. I had the wrong name pulled up. Christian Harris, I did like a little bit, but he's got some stuff too. My notes say prototypical size. He's the guy you want coming off the bus early. He's 6'1" plus, 230 plus. It was just absolutely shredded arms, and good bulk in his lower body as well. Mostly a Mike or Will, but took some snaps in the slot and on the line of scrimmage. Very physical presence, not just a chase linebacker. He likes contact. He has decent contact balance when he gets engaged specifically. But again, seems like his processor may be a bit slow. He looks almost too deliberate at times. And I understand it's Alabama and you're playing on a front seven also filled with first rounders, but he was very often the last of that front seven to start moving once the play started. To me, it's like he's taking a little bit longer to kind of process the information that he sees in front of him. He played 2,000 plus snaps for Alabama over 3 years. He probably should be better at getting through his keys quicker. This is not a situation where this guy didn't have the opportunity to kind of learn the defense or experience. He's got both those, and he still isn't quite what I'm looking for. Certainly not this guy's not a first rounder, a day one guy as far as anyway. So, but I mean, just you would expect a Alabama linebacker to be just a little bit further along in the spot. He's a bit stiff-hipped, especially when trying to flip his hips and change direction. He just it doesn't look great. He doesn't have great zone awareness. That's another thing, an issue when he's having to drop in country zones. It's just like he can lose guys, especially behind him. He just doesn't have if it's not right in front of him, it doesn't feel like he has that kind of awareness. Where does he win? He's a physical striking linebacker I think he's going to be a force in the run game especially if he can clean up the processing stuff a little bit and just kind of get to the ball quicker. The unanswered questions I have is, can he do that? You worry about guys who have so much time on task and then asking them to improve, right? Because they've already spent as much time with coaches that are trying to get them to improve as they will in professional football inside the context of the team, right? Like whatever work you do in the offseason in the NFL, that's how you actually get better.
Yep.
Being on the field during the season, there's just not a lot of time with your individual coaching staffs to kind of actually improve a ton. So college is a great opportunity, especially at a school like Alabama. It's a little bit concerning that he spent all that time with Nick Saban and this Alabama defense, and he hadn't really developed more than he has where he is right now.
When you watched him, did you kind of get the thought that he was like a downhill middle linebacker, like that you would traditionally see like in Baltimore or Pittsburgh or New England?
He, to me, read like a I used to call them Mo linebackers. They're like the inside, the weak side inside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's what he reads to me. Like he's a guy that he could run a little bit, but you're not necessarily wanting him to play like a full Will, right?
No, you want him running downhill. Is what?
Yeah, because he can take on blockers. He could be a blitzer inside. Like I trust him to do that stuff. He can do a little bit of coverage stuff, but you don't necessarily want him.
You want him covering flats more than anything else. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's this is a guy that feels like a linebacker from another time. From 10 years ago potentially.
Really quickly,
I have a hard time placing him this year.
Two guys that I wrote in my notes, like just to compare him to a last year prospect, like Nick Bolton, right? Nick Bolton was in the similar mold of a downhill run stopping linebacker, but I feel like Bolton had way better instincts.
Oh yeah,
and an idea of how to stop the run. On top of that, Bolton was a better tackler. I don't love the way that Christian Harris tackles. It seems like he misses a lot of tackles.
It's a lunger, at times.
He is.
And kind of he kind of gets away with that same sort of, he tries to do some of that tackling that Landon does sometimes, but Landon has incredibly huge wingspan, right? So he kind of envelops the guy where it feels like this guy will really let running backs and ball carriers kind of slip through his arms when he tries to like envelop them. So
he came to Alabama as a cornerback, and that makes a ton of sense when you watch him try to tackle, right?
What? He came to Alabama as a
he was 6'1", 200 pounds as a corner. And that's kind of the way he tackles. Like he almost wants running backs to get into his chest, and he's going to slide down and tackle their ankles, right? I don't love his
I'm surprised
tackling.
he isn't more aware in coverage, that if he was a corner. I mean, he doesn't have great. It's like he forgets. It's like he gets myopic in the snap, right? You watch him, and it's almost like he's just watching the snap, for like a tick before he does anything. So, that's a little bit surprising to say the least.
I think the hope is that, well, not the hope. I mean, the ceiling is like a Denzel Perryman level linebacker that the Chargers and the Raiders have had, where you want him coming downhill a lot. He really reminds me a lot of a linebacker that came out a couple of years ago, Jordan Brooks, who the Seahawks took in the end of round 1. Mm-hmm. He's that mold of a linebacker. So how does that fit in with Dallas? I'm not sure that it does, Landon.
It's not really a great fit. I mean, you don't. This is. I mean, essentially, he's not the same player, but I mean, this is essentially the same skill set and the fit as what Jalen Smith was doing for you, right? Yep. And they cut him. So, I don't think that this is necessarily a guy that I'm interested in. To me, this is like a third or fourth rounder, or maybe even lower.
It's just funny that you say that, because I'm pulling up the consensus board now. 40 overall is his projected landing spot. So you're talking about a guy potentially late round 1, early round 2. No. Just not interested at that price point.
No, I'm not interested.
I think there's going to be better. I think there's going to be better linebackers available to the Cowboys in the second round that fit their defense better than Harris does.
I've watched 6 linebackers, I think, and he's my least favorite one so far. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. Last part of the show. Rank these 3 linebackers before we head out.
So we got Dean, we've got
Lloyd,
Harris, and we've got Tyndall. I would say
Lloyd, not Tyndall. We're gonna say.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. I got all these.
Don't worry. I'm excited about Tyndall. We'll talk about him on a different show.
I would say Lloyd, Dean, Harris would be the order. It's pretty clear for me, and I think that Dean and Lloyd are closer to each other than Harris is to anybody.
I would go Dean.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, wait. I got that right. Lloyd and Dean are closer together. Sorry.
I would go Dean, Lloyd, and then maybe a round and a half gap between those guys and Harris.
Yeah, there's definitely some distance between Dean and Lloyd and Harris in my mind, for sure.
I agree. I could see a scheme in which Christian Harris works, like a Baltimore scheme where you're just really asking your linebackers to come down and be blitzers and be athletic. I think that makes sense. Not sure Dallas is the best spot for him.
I can't understand like a day 2 pick for a guy that you're just not necessarily going to want on the field very much in passing downs, especially in today's.
No, NFL, you're going to blitz them on passing downs. It's just
but you're not going to do that every time. Like what I'm saying. So it's like either you're going to play him in some sort of full-time pass rushing mode on passing downs, like, and really ham fist that in, or and then he's going to play run downs early, that just seems like really forcing a player onto the field as opposed to getting people that are good at the jobs that you're trying to get them to do.
I agree. I completely agree. All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow to answer some more of your Twitter questions. We got a busy rest of the week, and then we're going to continue with our draft profiles here next week. Free agency is coming up in a little bit, franchise tag stuff. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you next time.